From the studios of Books in Motion in Spokane, Washington, this is Kris Faulkner reading Refuge by Tawn Bergren. Now let's begin with Refuge. Chapter 1. Friday, July 16th. And if you weren't heading off to some crazy mountain town, you'd be here helping me. Sorry, Susan. If I wasn't on my way to Elkhorn, not that I want you to remember the name, I'd be on my way to the Bahamas. I'm on vacation, remember? No phone calls. Her boss sighed over the cell line from San Francisco. Right, no phone calls. So vacate, get out of here. I'll talk to you in a couple weeks. I'll talk to you then, Rachel agreed. She hung up and stared out the tiny plane window at her right. She and Beth were supposed to be hitting Club Med this year, but instead Rachel found herself on a minuscule plane, bouncing over air pockets formed by the soaring Rocky Mountains below. She closed her eyes and envisioned herself vacationing on a tropical island, sipping iced tea served by handsome single men. Her stomach rose as the tiny puddle jumper dropped 500 feet. The pilot leaned around the tiny curtain that had been placed there in a vain attempt to conceal the cockpit's blinking lights and array of instruments. Quite a ride, huh? He asked loudly of Rachel, giving her a cocky wink and a grin. He leaned back into his seat before he could see her grimace, and turn what she knew must be a pale green as they sailed upward, and then down again. Might as well be a roller coaster, Rachel mumbled. She closed her eyes and turned her thoughts to warm ocean breezes, hoping to settle her stomach. Maybe she could get away to the tropics this spring, alone if necessary. The startling mountainous beauty below was lost on her. In Rachel's eyes, this was the end of the world, and she wasn't pleased to be arriving at its edge. 15 minutes till we reach Elkhorn International Airport, the pilot yelled over the din of the engines. Elkhorn International? Rachel wondered in amusement. She surmised that the term could refer only to their proximity to the Canadian border. Rachel forced herself to look at the majestic sight outside her window, but her thoughts were elsewhere. I just want to get off this horrible plane and see Beth. The trip from San Francisco had frazzled her nerves, especially the last 3 hours she'd spent on the small aircraft. She laughed at a brochure in front of her detailing the mileage program. I'm taking the train home, she thought. The plane glided into the huge mountain valley and slid onto the tiny runway. In spite of herself, Rachel was impressed with the pilot's ability. She looked eagerly out the windows for her oldest and dearest friend, finally spotting Beth beside a huge red Ford waving excitedly. Oh my, Rachel grinned at the side of the four-wheel drive truck. Hope she doesn't have any guns mounted in the back window. The plane reached the small terminal and lurched to a stop. Moments later, the pilot left the cockpit and released the locks that held the door in place while ground personnel pulled the door outward, letting in a wave of clear mountain air. Rachel inhaled deeply, noting scents of pine and manure and dry dust. Thank you for flying with us, ladies and gentlemen, the pilot announced with practiced care. Enjoy your stay in Elkhorn, and please call on us again for your Rocky Mountain travel needs. Concluding his speech, he ducked out the door and stood at the bottom of the 3 steps to assist anyone who needed help deplaning. He was gruffly ignored by the other 5 passengers, men on their way to hunt or fish in one of the last great American wildernesses. Rachel reluctantly accepted his hand more for his sake than hers. Seeing her friend, she let out a cry. Grinning widely, Beth ran forward and threw her arms around Rachel. The 2 women gave each other a long hug, both talking excitedly at once. They drew several admiring stares from the men around them, but were too absorbed in their reunion to pay much attention to them. Welcome to Montana, Beth said with a huge smile of pride as if she'd personally created the land. Looks like you had your share of single men on board, she said more quietly. Anyone interesting? No, Rachel responded firmly, but with a laugh. All that testosterone in a compressed compartment could be dangerous, I didn't want to stir anyone up. No big deal. All this place is swimming with men.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?